Hi everyone, welcome to Outside Lane. And remember when I made my February ranking where I said that the year was very slow and not very eventful? Oh boy, how the tides have shifted.
This ain't Texas, ain't no hold 'em.
So, ever since I released my last top 20 ranking, the charts were slowly shifting to a more interesting direction. But that shift really exploded in March, with some massive releases that led to many events that we are going to talk about on this video. And the charts have been extremely busy, not just by making the charts grow in chart points, having some of its biggest hits since, well, 2019, but it also led to some of the most interesting moments in mainstream music, at least for this decade. Let me give you a view of things to come. We have the beef between two of the biggest rappers in the world that exploded with a Future/Metro Boomin collab album of all things. Beyonce releasing a country album that actually led to other country artists getting more mainstream success. Other pop stars released massive albums that led to some, let's just say, interesting discourse, and some other very unexpected gigantic hits coming from B-list pop stars becoming A-listers overnight, some names I've never heard in my life getting TikTok hits overnight as well, and Hosier. It had to happen one day, you know? Also, we got the whole UMG/TikTok feud. That was when UMG removed their music library from the app because they couldn't reach a deal for the license, and that led to some artists not getting any TikTok promo for a couple of months, but they managed to get a new deal and all of their acts' music is back on TikTok. Although given the fact that TikTok will potentially be banned in the US because the country does not want you to know about the genocide happening in Gaza, and the fact that said genocide is being funded with your tax money, I wonder for how long the app is gonna stay active. By the way, free Palestine if it wasn't obvious. Well, that was a lot of stuff. And honestly, I don't think that's enough. That's how eventful these last couple of months have been. And trust me, in the next couple of weeks, there's gonna be a lot more things to come. So that's where we are now. And we are here to make another top 20 ranking. Global charts because it makes more sense to use them now more than ever. The US is not the only country that matters, even if they want you to think that. And it does give me a leeway to talk about more hits that might not be big there. I'm applying the rules of if I talked about a song on my channel at least twice, I'll remove them for the sake of repetition, which are all of these that are on the screen now. I'm also putting a limit of 3 songs per artist. So I'm also removing Who's Afraid of Little Old Me by Taylor Swift from this ranking because then that would be 4 Taylor Swift songs. Tiers are the same as most videos, and I need to remind everyone that this is my opinion, and if you have a different opinion of mine, that's fair. I'm not the only person allowed to have opinions, and if you want to share your own opinions or rankings, that's fine. But without further ado, let's begin our ranking, starting with the only song I dislike. Thankfully, it's one of the 2 repeats here, which is... Please stay. I want you, I need you, oh God. Oh yeah, this is still here. And just like last time, I still think this is terrible. Maybe if that shift in the chorus didn't happen, maybe it could have been a bit better, but honestly, not by much, knowing that I don't like Benson Boone's vocals and his falsetto is just god-awful. Just a completely unpleasant song all around. And I mean, it's not like I wanted to hate all of his music, so I actually decided to listen to his debut, Fireworks and Rollerblades, to see if there was something there, and yeah, I just can't. So while this is terrible, be happy that Cry is not the biggest hit. I'm not being hyperbolic when I say that this is probably the worst song I've heard all year. For the love of everything that's sacred, don't make this a hit.
You and me belong together like cold iced tea.
Oh, so I guess the Stomp and Clap indie folk revival is really coming back in full swing. It feels like we are back in 2014, isn't it? And while that revival has been showing its seeds ever since Noah Kahan breakthrough, it's now pretty much established, especially with lesser known names getting their own big hits. And thus, we have this, from New York artist Mark Embor, who I'll be honest, I've never heard in my life. But this got viral on TikTok, and it is exactly what I described, an indie folk stomp and clap track. Now, I do have a slightly bigger tolerance for this genre than a lot of people have, but even with that, Oh my god, I did not care for this in the slightest. Like, the sound itself is alright, the guitar melody is fine, the guy itself sounds like Shawn Mendes, which is not exactly a bad thing, but also doesn't show a lot of personality, and it's a pretty standard, although very saccharine love song that honestly just gives me nothing. Yeah, it's kind of annoying, but it's also a nothing song. It's inoffensive, and by that hook alone, I could see this being big in several commercials, but it's just very bland. Honestly, I would rather not see this sticking around. Can you make it stop, Noah Khan? Please?
Ey, dale, ponte pa' mí, follow me, tú eres life for me. Yo estoy pa' ligada, tú estás libre, mándame tu email.
And this is actually our only reggaeton song. I mean, it's not like reggaeton isn't doing well, it still is. Just go look at the rest of the Global 200 and you'll see. But with so much stuff happening currently, it just kinda overshadows the genre, at least here. But for now, this seems to be the biggest hit in the genre. Coming from two Chilean artists that I actually recognize one of the names, in this case Chris MJ that had a global hit back in 2022 with Una Noche en Medellin that got a Karol G remix a year later. I mean, it kinda makes sense because Karol G is from Medellin herself, but it's funny that the song wasn't even charting at that point. And Floyd Menor, I didn't recognize. But they managed to cross over finally, and well, I also don't care for this. Honestly, what I'm more focused on is just how underweight this sounds. The percussion just doesn't really hit in the slightest. The singers sound absolutely faded from the mix and just completely nondescript, and the mixing on this song is already as rough as it is. The synths sound kinda wonky, and overall it's just not very fun. Also, the lyrics are kinda nasty, but if you want, I guess you can ignore that. I'll say that the slightly faster tempo doesn't make it that much of a slog at least. We're not at La Bebe remix levels of slog, and the key melody sounds at least a bit better than that one, but it's also just not that interesting. I guess if you just let it simmer in the car with a good bass, it could work, but outside of that, I don't see this one growing on me. So yeah, just very forgettable as a whole.
You got a lot of nerve, don't you, baby? I only hit the curb 'cause you made me.
So, I guess we need to have a conversation about Post Malone because what the fuck is going on? If you went back to 2018 and especially 2019, calling Post Malone a hitmaker was very obvious. At that point, he had 4 #1 hits, 2 massive albums, and some surprisingly goodwill, especially coming from the guy who started with White Iverson. But with 12 Karat 2 Fake, something shifted. Not only the singles from the album were not doing that well, outside of I Like You a Happier song, but that's because it was pretty much a sellout even if I didn't mind the song, and Doja's also there, that helps. But it felt like he wasn't even in the conversation anymore when we were talking about mainstream artists, and by Austin, well, that hitmaker status was pretty much down the toilet. So, you're in your supposed flop era. What do you do? Well, start collaborating with multiple big artists, that could work. And that's what he did. We got the Dial Drunk remix, which was a decent hit to be fair. Then we got Levi's Jeans from Beyonce's Cowboy Carter, which didn't go anywhere, and thank God, it's easily the worst song on the album. Then we got Fortnite, which we're gonna talk about it soon. And now this, that like Fortnite also went to #1. The shocking thing is that not just in the Hot 100, but the global charts as well. And he got a much better debut in the Global 200 excluding the US charts, which is just shocking. Not just by the fact that Posty's hitmaking career is not as strong as he once was, but you also have the other artists collabing with him. You know who. Look, if you've been watching my channel, you very much know my opinion about Morgan Wallen. I've been very vocal about it, mostly because he just won't leave us alone. I've never liked his music, and after the incident, I was already done with him, but the fact that he makes such mediocre music doesn't help matters either. But I mean, he was crossing over in other countries outside of the US. Last Night didn't do that bad actually. I guess this is his true crossover hit worldwide. And well, I mean, it's one of the better songs that Morgan Wallen has been attached to. Even with that, I don't think I care for this that much. I mean, I guess it does fit for both artists, as it does fall under the umbrella of pop rock with the drums and the okay groove, and country, especially with that post-chorus. It doesn't sound bad, but it's just also very formulaic as well. And while both artists sound fine, well, hell, this is the best that Morgan Wallen has sounded in years possibly. No one here has any interplay, and while the lyrics aren't that bad, where they're aware that the relationship is very much done and they are at fault, but they also know that the ex is also to blame for it to fall apart. I mean, for both of these artists, especially for Morgan Wallen, they can do a lot worse, but I don't know. Even aware that they can do much worse than this, the tone just feels kind of off. Look, maybe I can get the appeal of this one, it's not exactly bad, I just don't think it works that much. And knowing that country radio is doing a massive push for this, and it broke records on streaming, yeah, this ain't going anywhere. I mean, it could be worse, I guess. Just kinda mid.
Now I'm down bad, crying at the gym. Everything comes out, teenage petulance.
Well, we finally get to another story on this video, the release of Taylor Swift's newest album, The Tortured Poets Department. And oh god, what a mess it was. Not only because of the album's title, and the songs as well, which to be fair, it is a really bad title for the album, but the buzz surrounding the record has been rough. Not helped when a few hours she released another album, The Anthology, which included 15 new songs. Girl, please just take a break. You're gonna be fine. Combine that with the complete overexposure of Taylor Swift for the last few years, and her brief relationship with the 1975 vocalist and also second coming of Morrissey, Matty Healy, which, let's be fair, a lot of people are gonna give you the side eye for that, even if I don't care for Taylor Swift's personal life. Yeah, it's been a mess. But look, I've liked a lot of Taylor's music for the last few years. Even in Midnights, where the buzz was kinda similar, I wound up enjoying a lot of it. So, I actually wanted to give a fair shot to this album. And well, it sure is a Taylor Swift album. I've heard it being described as a mix between Midnights and Folklore, and I can see that. The sound isn't as sedate as the former. There are a couple of songs that do kick a notch, but there's moments that just feel kinda like a regression, and the lyrics can be a bit of a mixed bag. I know some of the lyrics have been taken out of context, which is honestly just kinda disingenuous when you can literally do the same thing with any artist, and it will sound just as disingenuous. But while I do appreciate some themes on this record, I will agree that there were times that someone should have just said no to Taylor. So here's the first of 3 songs from the album, Down Bad. Yeah, that's the title. And yeah, I don't like this one very much. And look, if you remove the dumb title, no everyone, Taylor is not that type of down bad. I'll say that I like the contrast between the verses and the chorus, where in the verses she describes a love that feels otherworldly, like she's been abducted by aliens that captures her in a heartbeat. But once the chorus hits, she snaps back to reality, as she feels like this ex abandoned her for no reason. I mean, the lyrics are kinda melodramatic, but honestly, there are much more melodramatic songs on the album, and once you get used to it, it doesn't really affect you. Now, where the song just loses me is the instrumentation and production. Now, on some level, I get what it's trying to go for. It's really sedated, even lethargic, especially with the percussion, the main synth line, and some of the keys that almost feels very alien, kind of fitting with the lyrics. So this sort of lethargic atmosphere, yeah, it feels like an intentional choice. But even if I see what it's trying to go for, man, this is just a slog that I just don't get any enjoyment from. It just doesn't really appeal to me. Especially that one synth that appears in the post-chorus.
Down bad. Forget if I can't have him.
I hate it. I just hate it. I cannot stand it. This might be my least favorite song from the record. It just reminds me of the worst moments of Midnights. Again, I get what it's trying to go for, but I'm just not a fan. Sorry. Oh god, this one.
I like the way you kiss me. I can tell you miss it. I can tell it is.
So, there's a lot I can say about this. So let's put some context. Artemis is a British independent artist who did have a semi-viral hit with the song If You Think I'm Pretty at the beginning of the year, and released a tape with that song in it. And then he released this song that wasn't on the tape and went mega viral very quickly. It almost even hit the #1 on the Global 200, ultimately being blocked by a song that we'll talk about soon. And honestly, I'm not sure how to tackle this one, because On paper, this is something I should like. A darkwave song with a pretty decent bass line and some solid synths and even some guitar shredding before the last chorus that sounds kind of really good. It should be right up my alley. Unfortunately, the execution is what doesn't work. Because while those elements are still there, it's filtered in a way that it just sounds so sludgy, especially the bass. In the lyrics where this guy describes a hookup where he doesn't want this person to feel attached to him is honestly kind of questionable, but even if you ignore that, what actually might make this worse is the vocals and the voice mixing. Not only the vocals are just filled with filters and just pitch shifted to hell, this guy just cannot sell any of the atmosphere that the song is trying to convey. So yeah, while this could have worked, it just works less than it actually should. There's much better darkwave out there, trust me. Just this year, Ali-X released Girl With No Face that tackles some similar sounds, and it's far better than this could ever be. So yeah, just kinda mediocre. And now here's our second and last repeat, and I pretty much feel the same as I did on the last video. A pretty average pop soul fusion that just doesn't give me a lot, but that I can tolerate, mostly because Teddy Swims is a legit great singer. So just fine, honestly. At this point, the only time I think about this song is how this label just made a bunch of remixes to boost this to #1, which actually worked. I mean, at this point, I'm very much unfazed by this strategy. Many artists also do the same thing, and somehow even worse, but it's just kind of hilarious. So yeah, it's just fine, I guess.
Think about me every night, oh, is it that sweet? I guess so. Say you can't sleep, baby, I know.
I guess Sabrina Carpenter has finally managed to get the big hit she wanted. I mean, that's not to say that she wasn't close. Nonsense and Feather did very well, but this absolutely overshadowed those by a mile. Not bad for the actress that was part of this.
Alright, this website lists symptoms of Asperger's. The first one they mention is social awkwardness.
Check. You don't do anything awkward.
Well, that's just something you do and you're gonna stop doing that. He's gonna stop doing that.
That was really bad.
Oh, you also have Skin, but I guess we don't talk about that anymore. So I will say that I have managed to like a couple of Sabrina songs. Feather is much closer from being an honorable mention on my best hits list than I want to admit. But how about this one? Well, I'm not that high on this one. Not to say that it's bad, it is really well produced. It's got that vintage new disco vibe that was a fever back in 2020 and 2021, especially with the synth keys and the bass. And then you have that synth guitar in the pre-chorus that kinda caught me off guard, but I do really like. Probably my favorite part on the song, but even if it's a sound that I don't mind, it's also a sound that it's been beaten to the ground at this point. And this doesn't come really close from the best. Doesn't really help with the fact that this isn't really Sabrina's best performance. I'm not saying that she's an amazing performer, but in a song like Feather, she can deliver somewhat of a sassy performance that honestly worked and fit well with the lyrics of that song in specific. While for this one, I mean, she's pulling a slightly lower register that doesn't really fit her, especially in the verses, and while the lyrics aren't offensive or something, a bit of an ego trip on how she can get any guy she wants, that's fine I guess, but the quirkiness of the lyrics that kinda worked in Feather, and I kinda hate to admit it, but also nonsense, it kinda tests my patience here. Nothing that egregious, but also it kinda doesn't make me like the song as much as I want. Again, it's decent. Pop stands are absolutely falling head over heels for this one, because the only thing they want is bubblegum pop nostalgia and nothing else, but I'm just kinda ready to move on from this sound. But that's just me. Now going from artists I'm well aware of to artists I'm absolutely not. Seeing this artist dominating the streaming charts just completely caught me off guard. So this is Tommy Richmond, Virginia-based artist who is part of Brent Faiyaz's independent label ISO Supremacy, even appearing on Brent Faiyaz's last mixtape, Larger Than Life, which isn't exactly a great mixtape, but I mean, it's at least a way to get your name known. I actually didn't remember his contribution on the song he was featured in, that being Upset, and I kinda get why, because he was a bit of a non-presence there. But hey, this could be better, right? And well, it is, at least a bit. I'm not entirely on board just yet, but I will say that the beat is really damn good. With the keys and the bouncy percussion, kinda sounds like a mixture between a 90s R&B song and a trap song from the 2020s. And I really like that combination. And the lyrics where he tries to split his time between improving his sounds and putting his state on the map, and wanting to advance things with this person he's had a relationship with is a nice balance. Nothing that revolutionary, but it feels honest. I think what doesn't make me like this song as much as I want is Tommy Richmond's vocals, in specific his falsetto in the chorus. It just doesn't really work for me as of now. His lower register is a bit better though. So for now, it seems like a promising start for him. Don't know if he will become an actual mainstay or just a one-hit wonder, but I wouldn't mind if he stuck around. I find this decent.
Someone pour me up a double shot of whiskey. They know me and Jack Daniels got a history.
This might be the most fascinating story on this video, at least for me. Let me explain why I find this interesting. So one of the collaborators from Cowboy Carter, from Beyonce, which focused on trying to regain the focus of country to the black community again, actually worked, leading to Shaboozey, also a Virginia-based artist, to have one of the biggest hits of the moment, even crossing over worldwide. We have been seeing a huge surge in country music over the last few years. Like it was popular before, it's always been popular in the US, but again, over the last few years, country has been slowly surging on streaming. I mean, we can thank Old Town Road for starting that, but then we got other names starting to get big on streaming, again, at least in the US. Names like Luke Combs, who started as a radio country guy but streaming welcomed him years later, with his cover of Fast Car being proof of that. Zach Bryan, who was and still is an independent artist that slowly became a streaming Goliath, with Something in the Orange still gaining streaming to this day, not to mention I Remember Everything that gave his and Casey's biggest hits, or sadly Morgan Wallen, who had the biggest hit of last year in the US, and streaming was a massive contributor to that. Not only they were huge in the US, they got some crossover outside of it. So we're seeing that country can actually be very profitable outside of the US. So in 2024, with the release of Cowboy Carter, Shaboozey and his label took advantage of that notoriety and released this new single that, like I said, spread like wildfire, leading to the song going to the top 10 in several countries, something that is not seen for a country artist, let alone a black country artist. So that is a good thing, either if I like the song or not. So what do I think of it? Well, it's pretty decent. The first thing you will probably notice about the song is the interpolation, that obviously being Tipsy by Jake One, a pretty big crunk hit from 2004, which for this song does surprisingly work, as he reverts its meaning to kind of a standard country bar song, as Shaboozey feels exhausted and beaten down about his problems, as he tries to wash them away at the bar where he can have a fun time with friends as they drink and sing their problems away, at least for that night at the bar. While yeah, it's the standard theme for a country song, it does have a more universal appeal, as it feels like it's trying to incentivize the audience to join the party, especially with that hook, and the instrumentation fits that tone. While pretty simple with that guitar melody and the stomp and claps, it's enough to work. Also, that fiddle in the post-chorus is really solid, and Shaboozey is a pretty charismatic and expressive singer that can sell the somewhat tired tone of the lyrics. So on its own, it does everything that it's trying to do very well. No wonder it's huge worldwide. The only thing I'm wondering is why it's not working for me as much as it should. It's just not really clicking with me for now. Maybe it could be the instrumentation that just doesn't have that special appeal to me outside of that fiddle, even if I get what it's trying to do. So yeah, I absolutely understand why it's huge, and why it's very well liked. Trust me, it is really well liked. Just not there yet. Although I could see it growing on me. Who knows, maybe in the next ranking if it's still here.
west to the sand.
And now going from a big worldwide country hit from a country artist who's been trying to break out for a while, to another big worldwide country hit coming from an artist that wasn't even trying to be a country singer to begin with. No, seriously. From what I've read, the artist Dasha, California native, entered the music industry as a pop singer, but gradually she just kinda steered away from pop and went through more of a country approach. Like with this single that was released late last year, only really getting popular a few months ago. Not sure if it was really on its own, or if the Cowboy Carter release had some influence to it, but I guess both could be correct. Hitting the top 10 in multiple countries. Surprisingly not in the US yet. What about the song though? Honestly, I found myself enjoying this quite a bit. I really like the instrumental with the main guitar line and the pretty solid groove, the galloping percussion that keeps the song steady, and while Dasha isn't as charismatic of a presence as Shabuzi is, she more than makes up for it for being a pretty solid singer. And she still has a presence that sells pretty well with the lyrics, where she planned to move to LA with her lover until she finds out that he wasn't really serious with the promise, and just left her alone without a reasoning or an explanation, but she managed to make it to LA on her own, where she can live her life freely and well, while he'll be stuck in Austin because he left her. It's a pretty interesting premise that it is surprisingly well detailed. I mean, there's no reasoning to why he left, but it still makes for a compelling premise. If I have a nitpick, is that I think the song could have hit an even special edge with a bridge in the final chorus. It just kinda ends abruptly with that second chorus. But outside of that, yeah, I endorse this. Pretty good stuff.
Wait a minute, 이게 뭐지? 내 심장이 열렸다. 잠깐만요.
Oh look, another breakthrough for a K-pop group I never heard of. So from what I found, Islet is a K-pop group from HYBE, same label that formed BTS, that got formed in a reality show called Are You Next from last year, and released their first EP this year, with this song becoming viral almost instantly, even charting in the Hot 100, which is nice to see. I mean, it's not the first time that this happened. Just last year, we got Cupid by 50/50, which became a massive hit worldwide, but also ended in some pretty awful results to the members of the group because they were blacklisted from the K-pop scene after speaking out of their label's abuse, outside of one member of the group that will stay for the new version of 50/50. If that even happens. So I am at least hoping that Islet isn't a much better label that actually cares about them, but what about the song? It's good. It's got a pretty solid groove with the strong synth bass that does a lot of the heavy lifting, alongside with the synth keys and all of the singer's performance that is pretty solid as well. And the lyrics are pretty simple, but cute I guess, although I will admit that it isn't perfect. It's a bit too overproduced, especially in the chorus that is a bit too repetitive, and the post-chorus with all of the pitch-shifted vocals that feel kind of annoying, and while the trap and Jersey Club breakdowns in the second verse and bridge aren't bad, it just feels like it's taking a lot of sounds and trends all into one but not quite sticking the landing. Again, not bad, but it could have been better, but even with that, I think there's enough quality to call this good. I like it. Solid stuff. Again, I'm just hoping that this group is in a better label, but yeah, I like this.
I was supposed to be sent away, but they forgot to come and get me.
And now we're back with some more Taylor Swift. And this is not the last we're gonna mention her, but more on that later. This is the lead single and currently the biggest song on the Tortured Poets department. A song called Fortnite. Okay, but when can I play with Taylor Swift in the actual game? And it's a collaboration with Post Malone, which is a collaboration I wouldn't expect in a million years. I mean, I'm not really sure why all of a sudden Post Malone is getting picked up for these massive pop collabs, but you know what? Whatever. It is the lead single though, which honestly surprises me because sound-wise, it sure as hell doesn't sound like one. It's very toned down, really sedate, honestly even more than down bad, the Taylor entry we talked about before. I mean, it has a catchy hook, and the two artists are big, so that might have done it. And also, Taylor Swift sells like crazy, and you know, all of the remixes she makes for all of her songs, which is just absurd. And yet, I'm kinda stunned that I like it as much as I do. I mean, It's probably the most Midnights-esque song on the album, but I still really like that synth bass, even if the percussion could have been metered in the mix a lot better. And all of the synth touches throughout the song are really good. And while this is not exactly Taylor's best performance, she does her job well. And honestly, I think Post Malone of all people does help a lot here, especially supporting Taylor's vocals. I mean, yeah, he gets the same treatment as Lana Del Rey does on Snow on the Beach, but in this case, it was for the better. I mean, just look at what happened at Levi's Jeans by Beyonce and you will get why this is better. And the content where her ex-lover is now her neighbor, who at first feels like he's moved on and happily married, which is pretty much the contrast to Taylor, who's jaded and unhappily married to someone who would later cheat on her. And she tries to grow this facade that she's moved on, but ever so slightly it falls off. Like the fact that she fantasizes on killing his wife. And both of the characters still kinda reminisce on what could have been if they stayed together. It is hyperbolic and quite melodramatic, but honestly, I think it works to set the scene for the album very well. In my opinion, it feels like a final goodbye to the Midnights era, and then the second song, which is the title track, would be pretty much the introduction to this new era. But honestly, the thing that made me like this song so much is the outro, where that one synth at the end just quietly explodes and it just sounds so good. Yeah, it's brief and there could have been a lot more to it, but when you get to it, it's just so worth it. So yeah, I wound up enjoying this one a lot more than I want to admit. Wouldn't call it amazing, and doesn't do that much to stand out as one of Taylor's best lead singles, but yeah, I still think it works. And speaking of more Taylor Swift,
I can do it with a broken heart. I'm so depressed, I act like it's my birthday.
okay, this one will be a lot easier to talk about. It is destined to be the next single, and I get why, because this one just slaps. It's just a synth pop banger that probably sounds the most like a Bleachers song without the actual Bleachers credits, especially with that jittery synth. I mean, you can also hear Jack Antonoff in the background, but whatever. But hey, I think it works, especially with the build-ups in the chorus and the actual chorus being really good. And when that main synth gets a lot more depth in the second chorus, it's really nice to hear. Now the writing, where Taylor tries to put on a smile and perform her best on her own tour while her whole love life is crashing down, can be really effective. If this becomes a fan favorite, and the one single from the album that the music video is recordings from the Eras tour, I would not be shocked. Now the sarcasm is not that well put together, the outro kinda tested my patience a little bit, but outside of that, yeah, this one works really well. Not my favorite from the album. If Taylor one day pushes Florida with Florence and the Machine, I will be very happy, but this is also a great choice for a single. Glad it's sticking around.
We can't be friends, but I'd like to just pretend.
Well, we now have the song from Eternal Sunshine that is actually doing well in the charts, so I kind of feel mixed with Eternal Sunshine. On one hand, it's probably her most personal album since Thank You Next, mostly because of the aftermath of her divorce and the homewrecker allegations that I will not even try to touch on, and there are moments from it that do really work, but then there are songs that just don't. For example, that rework of The Boy Is Mine that is expected to be the next single, that's not gonna end up in disaster. It's a decent album, just far from my favorite from Ariana. And We Can't Be Friends is thankfully a song I do really like, with that nice bass line that honestly kinda reminds me of a slower version of Trust Fall by Pink, which is a compliment, I really love that song. The steady percussion and some key choices that I do like a lot, and Ariana sounding a lot more understated in her delivery, but I do think it works here, especially on the bridge where she just sounds legit incredible. And that outro where it switches up to the strings sound really damn good, so on production and performance alone, I would already like this a lot. What might knock off some points for me might be the lyrics. On surface level, it could be about her just wanting some distance from this person due to how damaged that relationship has been. Maybe they can fix it with time, but for now, they need to go their separate ways, which is fine. And fair, honestly. But with the content context of the album, it becomes kinda bizarre. The song comes right after Yes and, where you have Ariana trying to dismiss any sort of criticism from her fans and critics, saying that she doesn't really care about it. Although, she clearly does, let's face it. Which would create a rift between her fanbase. And when We Can't Be Friends shows right after, it kinda sounds like a desperate grab to win the audience, where you go from fuck off, I don't care about what you say, to wait, that's not really what I meant. Look, maybe I'm being a bit too cynical, and I'm looking into it more than I should, but it's just kind of a bizarre framing in my opinion. Does that make me not like the song though? No, I still really like it a lot. So yeah, I still think this is kinda great. It's just some things that keeps it from being amazing. That's all. Now please don't push The Boy Is Mine. Supernatural and Bye are right there.
Just one more tear to cry, one teardrop from my eye.
You know, it's just kinda really funny when actors just get a really big hit out of nowhere for some reason. I mean, that happened with Dylan Minnette and his band Wallows back in 2020 with Are You Bored Yet?, which also featured Clairo, and it's also a song I like a lot more than I should. And on that note, here's Dijo, or Joe. If I said it wrong, correct me in the comments. Or Joe Keery, who you might know from Stranger Things, a show that I still have not watched it outside of the first episode, and given some recent news, yeah, I don't think I'll watch the rest. Now, from his acting career, what I know him more from is Spree, a movie about an incel that goes on a murder spree for views and has Joe Keery looking like this. Also, Dead Meat covered it on the kill count. But from opinions I heard from some friends, I've heard that he's a really good actor. Also, Maya Hawke, who's also in Stranger Things, has a music career as well. It's cool. But now he has a big hit in the charts with his solo venture that got viral on TikTok. And honestly, I get it, because I like this a lot. A pretty familiar type of synth pop that is very enjoyable, with the slightly off keys, that nice bass line, some guitars on the hook that are welcoming, and while Joe Keery isn't amazing as a singer, he still sounds decent, and the multi-tracking helps for a pretty satisfying chorus. I totally see why this got viral on TikTok just by that chorus alone, as he reminisces about past memories, changes that will affect his life, like moving out of places for a new journey, in the case of Joe Keery from Chicago to LA, which can be a pretty relatable theme. Even if I don't relate to it that much, mostly because it's a bit too vague to get there for me. Another reason I wouldn't call it excellent in my opinion is mostly because I think it could have ended in the stronger notes. The bridge calls for a massive crescendo that isn't that well paid off, and that makes it feel kind of anticlimactic. But outside of that, I still think this is a welcome surprise. Great stuff. Oh boy, here we go.
Sticking to the code, all these hoes for the street. I put it in her nose, it's gonna make her pussy leak.
Here's the part y'all were expecting from this video. The beef between Drake and Kendrick Lamar. This is not gonna be an easy conversation, not just because the topic is really loaded and I don't have all of the context for everything around it. By the way, if I commit any mistake or something like that, you can put it in the comments. I'm not perfect and I can get things wrong. Also, there are multiple videos just about this beef, either by people who have or don't have any idea about what they are talking about. The other motive is that it has gotten to the point where people have actually gotten injured because of it, even if the shooting outside of Drake's house is less because of the main beef and more because of the beef between OVO, Drake's label, and EXO, The Weeknd's label. So I will try my best to give a brief timeline of everything that happened. So in late March, Future and Metro Boomin released their first record from this year, We Don't Trust You, a collab album that made all of the sense in the world and also happened to be really damn good. And while it isn't anything new that these two have done together, it's just a huge amount of fun. I've been coming back a lot to the title track, Young Metro with The Weeknd, and Everyday Hustle with Rick Ross, but that doesn't really matter, doesn't it? What matters is the song Like That, which got instantly viral because of a Kendrick Lamar feature, which is something we haven't seen in a while outside of working with his cousin Baby Keem, but also because of what Kendrick said on the song. Now, it's not like he hasn't dissed Drake before. I mean, both Drake and Kendrick have been dissing each other since pretty much the Good Kid, Mad City days. Their beef goes for pretty much a decade at this point. Honestly, I was more surprised with the fall-off between Future and Drake, knowing the amount of times they worked together. But after the release of first-person shooter from For All of the Dogs in 2023, and that stupid reference that J. Cole pulled about the Big Free, I guess this was the fuel that Kendrick needed to rekindle the beef. Now let me just briefly talk about the song. It fucking slaps. At first I wasn't really a fan of the synth horns that opened the song, but the more I listened to it, the more it grew on me. But also added with the solid synth line and Metro Booming excelling on the trap percussion, it just makes for a fire beat that Future can ride pretty well. Yeah, I wouldn't call it his best performance, but he more than does the job, with one catchy hook. But yeah, the star of the show really is Kendrick, not just because by how engaged he sounds, like the man is pretty much hyping himself up, but the disses he pulls are legit hilarious, from the Big Me line to the insane call out of Drake's verse on First Person Shooter by saying that Prince outlived Michael Jackson, or his last line referencing Pet Sematary. It makes for a great song that is insanely quotable, a great diss track that served to really explode this beef for good, and the butterfly effect it caused was just something to behold. And speaking of that, well, let's continue the story. After the Like That debacle, many other artists started responding to the beef as well, either on Future/Metro's second album from this year, We Still Don't Trust You, coming from Future, or The Weeknd, or A$AP Rocky as well, or Rick Ross, who also released a diss track as well with one of the funniest covers I've seen in my life, or on the opposite side you have J. Cole that released a whole mixtape with a diss track to Kendrick attached at the end that was so pathetic that he kept the promise from the title of the mixtape and deleted the diss track right after. Then he would also appear on We Still Don't Trust You, which also makes this even funnier. It's just like the It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia meme. I mean, J. Cole's career is that meme, to be fair. Not long after, Drake finally released a response to Kendrick called Push-Ups. A decent diss track that, while it wasn't anything special, did serve as a provocation for Kendrick to respond. Also, that tailor-made freestyle thing that has AI verses from Snoop Dogg and Tupac, which I did not listen to it because fuck you, Drake. And then, Kendrick would respond with Euphoria, we're gonna talk about that soon, and 616 in LA, which would reveal that Kendrick has a mole on OVO. And after that, Drake responded with Family Matters, a longer and also messier diss track where he would respond to other people that diss him, like Metro Boomin, Rick Ross, A$AP Rocky, etc., as well as Kendrick, accusing him of domestic violence against his wife, which coming from him, I'm not sure if I believe him, but Drake is also working with the possibility that it might be true. So it was a way to damage Kendrick's reputation. And then, pretty much a half hour later, Kendrick drops Meet the Grams. There's a lot I can say about this. How it just completely destroyed any chance of Drake winning this beef, but also how it deconstructs Drake's whole character, deconstructing all of his relationships with his family, and revealing the possibility of Drake having another child. Which, to be fair, I also don't have any idea if it's true. But, and trigger warning for pedophilia and sexual abuse, the most scathing allegation being that Drake is a pedophile and that he's a sexual trafficker. Which is a really bold thing to say, but I mean, knowing all of the stuff we know from Drake and some recordings that are out there, I wouldn't be surprised. Plus, the Haunting beat, it's probably one of the most disturbing diss tracks I've heard in my life. So after that, I guess Kendrick thought that we needed a briefer or something. Which then leads us to...
Monster on the beat, ho, Debo, any rap nigga, he a freak though.
And here it is, one of the songs of the summer with a Mustard beat where he uses the Drake pedophilia accusations as a joke in the song. Did you have that on your 2024 bingo card? There's still quite a lot of things that we can say about this song, but before we get to all of that, let me just say that I actually kinda love the song. It's really catchy, it has a simple beat with the horn line, the bass and the snaps, but it works so damn well. And while I can't really say that this is Kendrick's best performance, it's still a pretty confident one, as this is pretty much Kendrick's victory lap after winning the whole beef, which would later be cemented with whatever the hell Drake released with The Hard Part 6. And yeah, some of these disses are just so good. From the John Stockton line that once you get the context, yikes, to the A minor line that, yeah, it's not exactly original, but with Kendrick's delivery, it more than makes up for it. Or just the whole colonizer line, where Drake goes in depth on how Drake took advantage of the whole Atlanta scene for his own benefits. There's just so much stuff to this that you can kinda understand why Kendrick is acting this way. Now, I have to obviously address some stuff. I mean, the whole shtick of making Drake's pedophilia allegations as kind of a joke certainly is an odd choice. I get why someone would be uncomfortable with it, but I guess this is Kendrick trying to piss off Drake in the best way he can. And I mean, having a #1 hit accusing Drake of being a pedophile is a way to piss him off. But again, I understand why someone would be uncomfortable with it. But even with that, I still kinda really love this. It is Kendrick's weakest diss on this whole thing, but honestly, still a great one. Okay, that was a heavy and pretty complicated conversation, so let's take a pause from this whole beef and see what other crazy things are going on the charts. Oh my god.
It can't be said I'm an early bird. It's 10 o'clock before I say a word.
This is my dream come true. Hozier is finally not a one-hit wonder. I've been waiting for this moment since fucking ever. Now if you think about it, it's not that unexpected for Hozier to have another hit. He always had a sizable fanbase just outside of the mainstream, and his albums, especially the self-titled because of, you guessed it, Take Me to Church, still sell really well. Add the factor that he's been surprisingly influential on his scene, and him charting on the Hot 100 with Eat Your Young last year, and also his collab with Noah Khan, Northern Attitude, and I guess it felt like Hozier having another proper hit was less of an if, but more of a when. And well, that happened. After the release of his EP Unheard from this year, which would later be added as sort of a bonus to his third album from last year, Unreal Unearthed, this became his biggest hit ever, even reaching #1, which is something that Take Me to Church never managed to make. And look, I've always been a Hozier fan, not just because he's one hell of a singer and performer, but he tends to be a better lyricist than many people give him credit to. And wouldn't you know, Too Sweet is the perfect example of that. I mean, just by that bass line alone, we knew he was onto something, but alongside with the percussion, the bells in the chorus, the scuzzy guitar in the post-chorus, and Hozier just sounding as great as always, this is just so fucking good. It's the type of car commercial music that actually has some fucking pulse to it. And then you add the choir at the second post-chorus, it's just so much fun. And I like the lyrics as well, where you have Hozier in a relationship with someone who's the complete opposite of him. While he wants to live his life more carefree, where he can experience all of the pleasures that life can give him, his partner wants to live a much healthier and disciplined life, which inevitably causes a rift between them, especially with his partner's failed attempt on incentivizing the narrator to change his habits. And while Hozier is fine with his partner's habits, that's just not who he is, as he just admits that they might not be the one for him. Again, I've always been a fan of Hozier's writing style, and this honestly ain't changing my opinion. I mean, this song has the line, "You treat your mouth as if it's heaven's gates," which is honestly one of my favorite lines of the year just by how insane it is. So yeah, this is absolutely a massive win. Not only he beat the one-hit wonder allegations, but with a fantastic song as well.
Them superpowers get neutralized. I can only watch in silence. The famous actor we once knew is looking paranoid and now spiraling.
Okay, now back to the beef, with possibly the best diss track on this whole thing. Here we have the diss track where everything was fun until the others came out and it stopped being fun. And my god, this legit just goes hard, as it feels like this is some shit that Kendrick had stuck in his throat for a long time now. But in a way that it's so well calculated, it's legit stunning. With a great beat with some legit incredible switch-ups, as it starts slow with the piano and the light percussion as he prepares to throw the big blows, while showing to Drake that he's misinterpreting the whole narrative of Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, which Kendrick would be proven right with the Heart Part 6, which then switches to the horn line with the trap beat that just kicks so much ass, and then another switch up for the final act that sounds just as good. But I mean, the star really is Kendrick, from probably the most engaging energy from all of his diss tracks, as he goes full hater mode on Drake, which he does actually admit, with some amazing disses, like the way he shows Drake's hypocrisy where he fakes prayers when someone dies due to street violence, or how one of the things that really made him make the diss was the way he disrespected Tupac with the tailor-made freestyle, or just him admitting that he likes Drake with the melodies and not when he acts tough, and as well as the mention of the Like That cease and desist. It's just so quotable and memorable, it's just legitimately impressive. And I like how Kendrick tries to warn Drake to keep it just as it is, just as another beef. He don't want to get things too personal, which Drake predictably did. So yeah, this is just an amazing song and an even better diss track. There's a chance that this might actually make the year-end list, and that is legit crazy to me. This will stand tall as one of the most memorable diss tracks ever, and it deserves it. Okay, the ranking is over, but not the video exactly, because you know what, let's give my opinion on some songs that are already locked for the year-end list, or I think will make the year-end list this year. If they don't, sorry, I'm not perfect, it could happen, especially with how strong the chart is currently. Look, it's a bit too simple, but Beyonce makes it work so well. It's just too much fun. No, I like Flo Milli honestly. I've liked most of her albums, even if I don't think they're amazing. Unfortunately, this is just decent, and it doesn't really show her best strengths. I do like the remix with SZA and Cardi B though. Easily one of Sabrina's best songs, and it's not even close. And honestly, Sabrina is kinda 70% the reason why I like this so much. You know, as much as I dislike Wig in the Truck with Lainey Wilson, at least there were some good intentions. This is just foul, all the way down. This is honestly an adrenaline rush. Great stuff coming from Luke Combs. He's kinda been on fire with his last singles. The fact that this isn't even top 5 worst on Pink Friday 2 is kinda worrying. The Move Your Body sample is just dreadful, and no one here is really giving a shit to give a good performance. I hate the fact that this missed the top 20 for this ranking, because if it actually made it, it would be my number 1 so easily. Like, SZA legit does not miss. Good for Money Long for getting another top 20 hits. It's just a shame that I don't like this as much as I want. It's a decent ballad, it's just not the type of R&B throwback I'm into. The Sure is a very mediocre song by a very conservative country artist. By the way, I'm not kidding with that statement. Barkham McCollum defended that Jason Aldean pro-lynching song. The fact that this ain't even top 3 worse than Pink Friday 2 is legit astounding. This just sounds like complete garbage. What a way to completely waste a Waka Flocka Flame sample. This is an alright country song, I guess. I legit have nothing else to say. God, it's so good to see Victoria Monet having a legit hit after being so many years in the backstage as a songwriter. Not close to my favorite song from Jaguar 2, but that groove is just undeniable. There sure is a pretty okay Tate McRae song that, while it is a bit questionable on production, it's kind of endearing. I wonder if this was the real reason that Kendrick made all of those diss tracks. I mean, if it wasn't for tailor-made freestyle, I think Kendrick would have been justified to make those diss tracks. I mean, with Drake's abysmal verse on this song that was actually tolerable before he showed up, I wouldn't blame him. You know, for as much as I like Till You Can't, it's a shame that this Cody Johnson song is just kinda forgettable in comparison. It's cute though, I guess. Yeah, I've never been a Bryson Tiller fan, and honestly, this ain't helping matters. I just get nothing from this. And while we're here, let's give some recommendations of songs that I like. And you know what? Instead of songs from the Hot 100, I'll just recommend some of my favorite songs from this year. There's just no real order to this, it's just some songs I really love that came from this year, and I would love to share with y'all.
All I wanna do is prove it to you.
Now off the tits, off the tits. Say what you wanna say away. Look at me now, too bad, enter the mirror. Bye bye, boy bye, bye bye. It's all me someday, and I think you will.
I actually put this one at last because this is actually my favorite song of the year. I've never been that big on Adrienne Lenker, but with her 2024 album Bright Future, I actually finally got it. But this song is, my god, it is just something else. I'll leave a pin to this one when I get to talk about my favorite songs of 2024, which, trust me, it will happen after my favorite hits of this year. But yeah, this is truly a masterpiece. And yeah, this was the video. If this winds up becoming the longest top 20 ranking I've ever made, I wouldn't be surprised, because there was a ton of stuff and it was really loaded and we got into some rough conversation, but at the end, I hope you at least had some fun with it. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say. Subscribe to my channel, like this video, and also if you can, please leave a comment to this video. It helps boosting the algorithm and I would love to see your own opinions. So outside of that, follow me on Twitter. I'm pretty active there. There's stuff that I don't talk there that I talk on my Twitter, so yeah, go follow me there. And that's pretty much all. I hope I see y'all soon.